afternoon. It's 12:51 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. 12:51 in the early afternoon p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Friday, September 15th, year 2023. Everybody wants some patents. And this little series here, Mark Kulak, Houstonic Live, we completed a reading of a approximately 80-page journal article, Yale Law Journal, recently called The Antibody Patent Paradox. And we are at a point right now where hopefully some people have digested the gist, if you will, of it. And there is, of course, we did not suggest that this gem of an article necessarily tells you the whole story, nor did we suggest that there's no angle. There's no angle to this, okay? Or that there is no angle. Of course, there's an angle to it. Of course, there's going to be things which are presented in a certain way and some things which are not highlighted and so on and so forth. So, now when we first read it, we didn't know what those would be. So what we're going to do is, as we find some things which seem relevant, and we'll continue on in the rest of our research related to all the crazy stuff and analysis, all the crazy stuff that's going on these days, trying to see beyond the debate, if you will, the division, which we are all encouraged to participate in. We're digging a little bit deeper than the headlines and on either mainstream or mainstream alternative, if you will, the acceptable alternative opinions. And with respect to COVID-19 and this great big patent issue here, of course, the patenting intellectual property is a big part of what's going on right now. And it's not really about money, of course. But I've encouraged people to read this article. Of course, it talks about all of the vast discrepancies in what has been described about how antibodies have been working versus how there's very little understanding about how they are structured. It's understood now that there is actually a galactic range of antibodies, that some different structurally similar or even identical antibodies can do different things in different people. I'm not a Tom Cowan fan, however, and I'm not endorsing the work he says. However, okay, there's enough confusion right now with understanding this massive range and how what antibodies are detected and when and what they do, that it is plausible, it is reasonable to put forward a statement such as perhaps they don't function exactly as has been thought. That's a possibility. The mechanics could be more complicated, more involved, more nuanced. There could be pieces we're missing. Now, that statement does not suggest that what has been measured and what has been monitored and observed can completely be crumbled up and thrown into the trash. Real things have been monitored and observed, okay? However, it's possible that there could be some misunderstandings. It could be a bigger picture. We're not sure. We could be misinterpreting something. Or something could have been misinterpreted. We don't know. So the point isn't to say that I'm endorsing that entirely. However, it's reasonable because there is such little correlation understood right now or provable between different antibodies and different structures and so on, with the presence or the past presence of different foreign pathogens in the bloodstream, etc. It's plausible to go, I wonder if there's more involved. Okay. That there's probably even other components, or maybe something is being misunderstood. It's possible. All right. So with that said, the article, the title of this one here, this first addendum, if you will, today, or today's addendum, is Juno and Celgene. These are two companies, and what they just sound like different companies. Let us go here, and we'll tell you what we are talking about. First, what we'll do is just go to Houstonic Live, and we have a full digital copy of this this article here. Let me get myself a little bit shrunken down a little bit. And one of the cases that this article talks extensively about is a company called Juno, Juno. All right. So if we search for Juno, we see 33 references of this company, Juno. Juno Therapeutics versus Kite Pharma, Kita. This is a case that's referenced many times in here, okay? And this is right up there with Centocor Orthobiotech versus Abbott Labs. Now, for a review here, Centocor versus Orthobiotech was a 2011 case. A case which is considered to be one of the most important patent disputes regarding proteins of the last 20 or maybe even 50 years. This is a really big case. Centocor Orthobiotech versus Abbott Labs, right? I'll zoom in a little bit here. All right. This is a 2011 case. Now, the reason why this case came to our attention, knowing how important it is because one of the key top lawyers here was Les Weinstein, the father of Brett Eric Weinstein and Eric Weinstein. On his own web page, he says it. You know, he's highlighting, and he is currently listed as one of the top arbitrators within the United States, in America, currently arbitrating the Uber case, matter of fact. How many trillions does that involve? But this Centocor Orthobiotech versus Abbott Labs. So we became aware of this, right? It's also sometimes seen as Centocor versus Genentech. Either way. And right up there, another one of these protein cases, and antibodies are proteins, is Juno versus Kite Pharma. So these are two big cases. And the third one that's referenced frequently is Amgen versus Sanofi. I don't have much to add to that. But a couple more things to add to this one here, Centocor versus Abbott, before we get on to why we're talking about Juno today, okay? One is that Centocor was founded in Philadelphia. It was a spin-off of the what's known as the Wistar, or the Wistar Institute, W-I-S-T-A-R. And one of their main founders was none other, I should say, than Hillary Kaprowski. The same Hillary Kaprowski who, as legend has it, and I question this sometimes now, played a role, was one of the three scientists to provide a vaccine for polio in the early 1950s, and it was his work, potentially some work which involved an accident that resulted in the collection of or use of monkey kidney cells for some vaccines in Africa or in the Belgian Congo in the 1950s, 1960s. Hence, one of the potential pathways to contamination and maybe even HIV. Who knows? Centocor is being based in Philadelphia. They of course now they've been acquired, but knowing that Hillary Kaprowski was involved in there is immediately fascinating to me because Kaprowski and the Wistar and so on and so forth also played a role in some of the early gene therapy companies, such as Viral Genomics, which became Inovio. And I won't say anything more about that. So you can see that there's multiple connections between individuals who we've studied and analyzed in our story, in the events of the last several years, and this Centocor Orthobiotech. So when certain people seem to be taking the stage as some of the most prominent voices in the truth and freedom and transparency movement, and not only did they do some of the incorporation paperwork for a company that is tangentially connected to Centaur, but also choose their big moment of being revealed on the Brett Weinstein show with Brett's own father, Les Weinstein, being the lawyer in that case. I see multiple connections. All right. So that is what it was, this Centaur orthobiotech case, and it was the study of Weinstein, Les Weinstein, that led us to this document, matter of fact. I have to highlight that, okay? That's how we figured this document out. And that's how when we saw these really big patent issues regarding proteins, and then that led to an even bigger topic of, or at least it's understood to be bigger, though it's, in a way, it's almost a subset, though, of antibodies. That's what led us to understand, okay, this is an important document, an important concept, and patents are really important. Now, the first case here that's referenced, Juno Therapeutics versus Kite Pharma. Now, this document has 33 references to Juno Therapeutics. However, if you do another search on it, and if you do CELGNE, there are no hits. So Celgene is a company which has no references, and Juno Therapeutics has 33. All right, well, you would think, well, maybe Celgene has absolutely nothing to do with this topic whatsoever. Fair enough. But if we go to Juno, the Juno Therapeutics Wikipedia page, whoops, I didn't mean to do June Shorts. I wanted to do Juno Therapeutics. Juno Therapeutics is actually interesting. I see. I'm just learning the second part myself here. So on June 18th, January 22nd, 2018, Juno was acquired by Celgene. Now in November 2019, I didn't know this part here. Bristol Myers Squibb, BMS, announced that it completed its acquisition of Celgene. Interesting. And going back here, likewise, no mention of Bristol Myers Squibbs in this massive article either. So, I mention this here because I see this partition, this slicing off, if you will. Like this article wants to talk about Juno pretty extensively. It's one of these big cases, protein cases, patent cases, and fine, but no mention that Juno's owned by Celgene, and now Celgene's owned by Bristol Myers Squibb. Fine, but no mention of Celgene. Is that important? Well, this company here is particularly fascinating to me, and I'm going to be learning more about it. Celgene Corporation is a pharmaceutical company that makes cancer and immunology drugs. Its main product is Revlimid, or lenalidomide, which is used in the treatment of multiple myeloma and also in certain anemias. Company incorporated in Delaware, headquartered in Summit, New Jersey, subsidiary Bristol Myers Squibb. Okay. So this drug, lenalidomide, sounds like a Mary Poppins tongue twister type song here. It has a chemical structure similar to thalidomide, but a different mechanism of action. Now, many of you are familiar with the thalidomide drug. You can read about that Wikipedia page briefly. But it was something which was studied on concentration camp visitors or people who ultimately died in World War II by some pretty sick scientists. Wanted to see what it did, and somehow it wound up providing some therapeutic value to just after World War II. I don't know exactly what the condition was, but it wound up, as was understood. Who knows what the truth is, but it was understood that when taken by pregnant women at a particular period during pregnancy, it would cause rather severe birth defects. And this chemical or this drug, thalidomide, these defects were rooted out and identified in late 1961, 1962, and it was the potential accidental use of thalidomide, which provided a cornerstone for the creation of the current realization of the Food and Drug Administration within the United States of America. So it's a foundational issue. Okay. Also interesting though is the case and the legislation, the research of thalidomide in 1961, 1962 was involved rather significant involvement of Les Weinstein, father of Brett and Eric Weinstein. He was the first patent lawyer hired by the United States Antitrust Division of the Department of Justice. First patent lawyer, hired by the Antitrust Division of the United States Department of Justice and by John F. Kennedy. And he was immediately put onto the case of not thalidomide, but something called the Drug Industry Antitrust Act, an act which was brought forward in 1961 by a senator from Tennessee, Estes Kefauver. Now, Kefauver wound up dying in 62, I think, or it was early 63, not too long afterwards. Had a rather sudden heart condition on the U.S. within Congress on the Senate floor. Almost died on the Senate floor, matter of fact. But actually wound up dying 2 days later, even though he wasn't that old and seemed to be in rather good health. But this topic of thalidomide it's amazing how it could be such a common thread of several companies and individuals. I don't know why. I'm still trying to figure that out. What we know is that it was a key substance which was identified, and what started off as Estes Kefauver's Drug Industry Antitrust Act in 61 became really the new FDA Act, which was rooted in this study of thalidomide potential misuse and harms. And much of the way the FDA works right now is based upon observations from that time. And it's, again, strikingly odd that I was a patent lawyer in the Department of Justice, Les Weinstein, involved in that case. Matter of fact, I think he actually flew to Europe in late October or November of 1961 to study it and see what was going on. And then, sure enough, here we are 50-something years later, and with the world changed now with COVID-19, his son running the big intellectual dark web podcast, and sure enough, one of the main topics, which is presented in this Antibody Patent Paradox document, is a company called Juno, which seems to have a lot of connections to this same freaking drug. So, taking it up a couple of steps here, I want to just look at the product portfolio of Celgene. Now, they started off. Celgene was originally a unit of Celanese. In 1986, Celanese completed its corporate spin-off of Celgene Corporation, so it became a separate company with American Oaks. I guess this is a German company here. Okay. In August of 2000, Celgene acquired a company called Signal Pharmaceuticals Incorporated, which is a privately held company that developed pharmaceuticals to regulate disease-related genes. Signal Pharmaceuticals was rebranded as Celgene Research San Diego. Now, first off, San Diego, you should immediately be thinking Salk Institute. Salk Institute, San Diego, right? Pharmaceuticals to regulate disease-related genes. You know what this is? This is gene silencing. This is a Signal Therapeutics gene silencing. And you should immediately be thinking of, sounds a lot like Silence Pharmaceuticals. It sounds a lot like other RNA silencing, potentially. Sounds like other content, which things have been explored with respect to gene therapy and so on. Also, odd connections to, believe it or not, Robert Malone. So in December of 2002, Celgene acquired Anthrogenesis, a privately held New Jersey-based biopharmaceuticals company, and cord blood banking business, which is developing technology for the recovery of stem cells from placental tissues following the completion of full-term successful pregnancies. Anthrogenesis was rebranded as Celgene Cellular Therapeutics. In 2006, Celgene certified McKesson Specialty, a specialty pharmacy, I don't think, as one of a group of pharmacies contracted to launch lenalidomide or Revlimid as a specialty drug. Okay, thank you. This is the other part of the puzzle here of why this is so fascinating to me. So Celgene, or Juno, which bought Juno, okay, its big drug is this lenalidomide, which is also known as Revlimid, okay? Again, Revlimid, structurally very similar to thalidomide. And if you go through the portfolio of Celgene, you'll find a lot of its thalidomide similar products. Now, hold on to your hats. Hold on to your hats, especially if you're on the East Coast. We have some windy conditions going on. We're going to be graced, or a little bit of a hurricane, perhaps, is going to be going by. And let's go, as we've been reviewing lately, the legacy of the history of the work of a one David Martin here, okay? And I mentioned this in a show a few days ago. Again, it's hard to believe, okay? But David Martin's MCAM technology, which does a lot of work on patents, right? Intellectual property here. Let's see, I do have the main document. I want to open this up here. So, of all of the products, of all of the intellectual property issues, oh boy, really, I can't do it like that. Oh, that's right, because that's the file name. I need to actually go to the URL. Thank you. That was a dummy move. So instead of all of the products that David Martin could have looked at in his career, all right, after highlighting the oddity that there's this geolocation similarity of the last 12 years between Robert Malone and David Martin, and it's gotten closer as they've been touring on the same circuit, both fighting for freedom and transparency and all that other horse crap, at least as far as the way they're presenting it, right? Of all of the topics that David Martin's MCAM could have looked at, the one document that I can find that is perhaps longest than any other research is freaking Celgene patent review and Revlimid, or the thalidomide case, or thalidomide. Of all the freaking things. Now, this Revlimid and its patent families do not appear to meet the criteria for legitimate patent protection. And this is MCAM assessment on May 13th, 2015. Now, and this document here does mention Revlimid and thalidomide many, many, many times. In fact, I think the first three paragraphs are interesting how it presents it. I can't figure out why this thalidomide concept, this drug, is so interesting. Or I should say why it just keeps popping up. I can't explain it. First off, at least it's been explained to us, DNA was much less understood in the World War II era than it is right now. Although, someone actually ran by me the possibility that DNA was actually much better understood at that time, and maybe this was one of the chemicals that was being used to study it, and they're just hoping that, I don't know, perhaps that's so it was known to have some relationship or connection or be a tool for DNA study back then, and they just don't want to talk about how much they knew back then. I'm not really sure, okay? It strikes me as odd when one specific thing, almost 50-something years later, 60, 70, 80 years later, is still a relevant chemical. Like, where did this stuff come from? What plant did you pull this stuff out of? Really, what is this stuff? Why do we keep studying it? So, but David Martin's big, and MCAM's big patent study was Celgene. Celgene patent review of Revlimid. Again, Celgene is this company that, if you look at their product portfolio, let's see here. They have thalidomide, which is thalidomide, dexamethylphenidate. Interesting. I didn't know they had some ADD stuff in there. Revlimid, which is also a thalidomide. Vizada, which is a, I think, and Revlimid. So, and I think approximately 60, 70, or 80% of the revenue comes from thalidomide or thalidomide variants, even though I thought it was a product that died in 1962. The stuff is still around. It's being reformulated and used in other interesting ways. And Celgene is a company which purchased this Juno Therapeutics in 2018. And this is this patent dispute that's referenced in the Antibody Patent Paradox, Juno Therapeutics versus Kite Pharma, is still being revisited. If you do a search online, you'll find that there's a whole bunch of legal talk about revisiting this particular case. And what does it come down to? It comes down to proteins, protein folding, antibodies, the patent issues of what's similar and what's not, and what should be seen as similar given a person with what reasonable skills in the arts, etc. If the range of proteins is effectively galactic, if it's not like there's just protein A, B, and C, if there's microscopic variance in protein construction across the population and possibly even within one's own body, and the methods at which proteins are being constructed and all the things which impact them is still not understood, nor do we really even understand all the things that certain proteins do mechanically. We can maybe at best have a few correlations. Think of how difficult it is to patent something when you don't know the full extent of what it does. You don't know the full extent of similarity to other things. You don't know everything that goes into making it and designing it. And it's not just antibodies. It's effectively all proteins, period. Sure, they have a map of the human genome somewhat for some cells. And they're still missing pieces, and they still don't really know what any of it does. How do you make patents in this case? How? No one knows. Of course, one thing that one could do, if this was seen as a challenge which united all the people at Davos, one thing that you could possibly do, or one thing that could have possibly been done, is the Davos crowd would go, wow. In order to advance our understanding of the human genome, we need to inject about 1 billion or so people and monitor what happens over a long period of time and how their bodies create different proteins and antibodies, antigens in response to a variety of different inputs, and then we need to monitor the outputs. How do we trick so many people into doing that, though? Well, you stage a pandemic, and you create a new world revolving around biosurveillance and protecting people against cooties. That's how you would do it. And that is the only, really, aside from, of course, there's battles of different global governments and local governments, etc., really plausible explanation for a unifying story of all the crap that's ongoing right now. It really is. Anyways, the highlight here, the addendum, is it's remarkable that one of the most referenced cases in here, Juno versus Kite, which is still being revisited. It's still being revisited as perhaps they should overturn it or they should add to it. Okay, I mean, it's $1 billion, which obviously it's a lot to you and me, but in the world of Davos and genetics, it's hilariously nothing, right? They are thinking in trillions. So it's not really about the money. There's obviously something else going on here. And it's not even really about which of these companies wins it. It's about probably the laying down of the law and how the whole system, the system as a whole, is going to be responding to it, right? But it's amazing that here they have Juno, and there's not one mention here that Juno was purchased by Celgene, and then it just blossoms out from there. Celgene's really, their whole background is around gene silencing, thalidomide, and of course that goes all the way back to 1960s, actually World War II, if you will, and Celgene being a topic of particular concern for MCAM and David Martin, even though the company, revenue-wise, I mean, what, $15 billion a year in revenue? That's pretty good. Their total equity is $6 billion. Is that their market cap? Wow. Total assets $35 billion, equity $6 billion. That's a very weird. Those are weird numbers. Anyways, we're not exactly talking Apple Corporation here. All right. Why so much focus on a relatively mid-sized company? Number of employees, 8,000, mid-size, right? It's a big company for any one person to ever dream of making. But in this world, it's kind of a mid-sized company. Why is David Martin, why was he told to be particularly interested in this? And note that in this document, which is you can download yourself, or you can get the copy that I downloaded. It's publicly available. And every time something is publicly available, that means that we are supposed to be reading it, right? Why are they saying that it does not meet the criteria for legitimate patent protection? I don't know. Maybe that's the right call. I just don't know, though, right? But when you see Revlimid, you should be thinking thalidomide variant, all right? Structurally very, very similar. But of course, as we said earlier, and as the Antibody Patent Paradox talks about, you need to understand structure to explain how something actually works. And maybe although it's easy to understand this stuff from the protein angle, maybe it applies to chemical compounds as well. If you can't explain how the structure impacts its function, perhaps you also have a patent issue just on chemicals themselves as well. Thalidomide and its variants do gene silencing in different ways. How? At some point, the patents need to go beyond just correlation. And you need to explain exactly how it's happening. And perhaps they don't know. Lots of big questions here. So that's all I'm going to do today. Again, for those of you who don't know, we are going through effectively a adoption right now. Very, very complicated and very busy. And my schedule is very, very unpredictable right now. I apologize I can't do shows ahead of time. Perhaps I'll do another one later on tonight. Just responding to some emails and stuff and some amazing letters that we've gotten. But I need to continue to taking care of some other stuff around here. But we'll probably do several other addendums to this. So we just did the review. That's all. Thank you very much, everyone. Sorry I'm not doing chat today. I hope you guys are all doing well. It is a beautiful day in New England. Do try to get some fresh air as it has been a rather hot and oppressive summer. Thank you for joining me. Hope this was useful. Appreciate your time. God bless.